My name is Douglas Shaw and I have no idea what the difference is between the RIDEARMOR and the RUBINO PRO. And these tyres are positioned identically in the Vittoria range in terms of price point.
Correct. Jake Law from Vittoria. I do know the difference and I'm here to tell Doug all about it.
So let's try and find out together. So I guess first of all, obviously the RIDEARMOR, the clues in the name with respect to punctures. Puncture resistant tyres, for me personally, and a lot of people will probably laugh at me when I say this, I personally never bother with these tyres. Right. I'll just go straight into the fastest tyre that I can until it's worn out, and then I'll just replace it with the next fastest tyre that I can afford at the time and until it wears out. But that's just my style of riding. And that kind of unfortunately puts me in a position where I feel that maybe subconsciously don't value puncture protection quite as highly as other people. And I guess that would be my take on the RIDEARMOR, but we're not necessarily doing a video on the RIDEARMOR in this video. We're comparing the pair of them.
What I can start with, Doug, is to basically say what you said makes a lot of sense. A lot of people do like the fastest tyre in our range, but what we're seeing over the last few years is definitely a move to the what you would call an all-road, road bike, something that's got wider tyres, wider rims, more tyre clearance, and a lot of those customers are going tubeless and they're using those bikes all year round. In fact, in many cases, they're actually verging into what you would consider gravel riding as well. Something that's still fast on the road, but something that if you do end up going onto a canal path or whatever, the tyre's not going to be that fragile. And it's for that customer that the RIDEARMOR was designed, to give you a modern tyre that is tubeless compatible, hookless compatible, but with the emphasis being on durability and puncture protection.
So you would almost classify this RIDEARMOR tyre as an all-road tyre?
Correct, exactly.
So it's the sort of customer that likes to take, I don't know, like a Ridley Griffin, which is an all-road bike, okay, and I want one pair of wheels, and I want to ride it on the road 80% of the time or even less, 70-80% of the time, but then if I want to ride down a nice canal path or very light gravel,
it could do it as well. Obviously we do a full range of our gravel tyres, which are probably a little bit more suitable for, your looser gravel stuff. But within reason.
Hard pack, we're all right.
Exactly. And for that reason, the RIDEARMOR is available from 26 in 2mm increments all the way up to 38C. So that really is verging into your gravel widths. So that in itself makes it clear what that's for. And like you say, the naming hopefully makes that clear as well.
Okay. And then how does that compare to the RUBINO Pro? So this is the same price?
So if you compare what the RUBINO Pro's for, because you said it's like a very similar price point, but the RUBINO Pro we do in two different versions. We do a folding version, which is not tubeless compatible, at £45, and a TLR tubeless version at £55, and then your RIDEARMOR is £60. So it's very similar price point when you compare it to the RUBINO Pro TLR.
So the core difference between these two tyres then, in terms of like rolling resistance and rideability, so the RUBINO Pro is kind of marketed as an entry-level performance tyre.
Correct.
Does it have a different compound to the RIDEARMOR?
It does indeed, So the RUBINO still uses our 3C, which is 3 different rubber compounds. So effectively you'll have a harder center tread, which will give you the faster rolling tread. You'll then have 2 on the sides, which are slightly softer to give you that kind of like grip you need from going into a corner and leaning the tyre over. And then underneath those 2, you'll have an extra compound, which is a harder compound, which gives you a little bit of that puncture protection. Okay,
so you've got fast rolling rubber in the middle, grippier rubber in the edges, and then hard rubber
underneath that.
And then direct comparison to the RIDEARMOR, which is puncture resistant, not fast race performance.
So the RIDEARMOR isn't so much getting its puncture resistance just from the rubber compound, but also by the fact that it's got a complete wrap from bead to bead. And if we compare the 2 casings, that becomes clear. So the RIDEARMOR's got a bead wrap that basically go from the bead all the way over to the other bead. And if you compare that to your RUBINO Pro, you've got a more flexible sidewall with a little bit of a puncture belt underneath the rubber, but not as much as the RIDEARMOR.
So you can visibly see there's more thickness. When you say the wrap, so I can see if you look carefully in the cross section here, there's this kind of material that goes through. So do you want to let me just know exactly what that is?
That's basically kind of like a Kevlar bead, if you like, a wrap that goes from one bead to the other bead right across. Usually when you're looking at protection on tyres, it's only really concentrated on the rubber cap, but not so much on the sidewall. But because of this tyre being used in urban conditions, and like I said, a little bit of light gravel as well, we wanted to strengthen that sidewall as well.
And so the sidewall protection for me is super important. For instance, Scottish roads, you go down a back road, which might be the case if you're on an adventure road bike. You hit a massive pothole. If you've got a fast tyre with no sidewall protection, if you hit it wrong, you could be tearing the sidewall right open.
Exactly.
With the best will in the world on any tyre, on any brand. But the sidewall protection on something like a RIDEARMOR does give you that extra little bit of protection. Makes sense when there's almost certainly going to be on the riding that you're doing coming up against the opportunity to be in that situation when you're in a pothole, maybe a slightly like a small moderate sized rock, and it's not unusual usual, you'd hit that on a canal path. You certainly don't want to be opening yourself up. Downside to rolling resistance though.
Absolutely.
And
that's always
grip,
the compromise.
Or just rolling resistance?
Well, I'd argue because you can run the pressures lower on the ride armor because of that extra sidewall protection, that in itself will give you that grip back.
Yeah.
Compared to like for like a RUBINO Pro with a thinner casing, that you would have to run at a slightly higher pressure to stop that. That kind of cutting that you would get on the sidewall, basically what you would call a pinch flat, where you're literally cutting the sidewall against the rim when you've hit an obstacle.
So less likely for a pinch flat with the ride armor.
Correct.
Less likely to rip the sidewall with the ride armor. Downside to rolling resistance. I mean, I guess for me, on a suppler casing, which the RUBINO is, likelihood of being able to feel the bike into a corner. So the rideability is also maybe slightly better on the RUBINO, would you agree? Or
absolutely. I mean, that when you're talking tyres, you always talk about compromises. It's just not possible right now to get something that's going to get suppleness, puncture protection, and durability. You have to effectively pick one of those as your priority, and that's the direction you go in.
Okay, so we've got the ride armor, which is great for puncture protection. Sidewall protection, I guess specifically, comes up to 38. So this is your all-road tyre. If someone's not obsessed with all-out speed at that 50, 60 pound price point in the UK, the RUBINO is same price point.
55 for your TLR and 45 for your folding.
Okay, so then TLR and folding, so it's important to say the folding isn't tubeless.
Absolutely,
So
now, what makes the ride armor unique is it's one tyre for anybody who's running in a tube, a conventional tubeless wheel, and a hookless wheel.
Okay,
so it's one product for all three of those customers.
Whereas RUBINO's got two product categories, I guess, tubeless, standard.
Exactly.
Standard just being tubed.
Exactly, folding.
And it's a supple entry-level race tyre that would be perfectly positioned on a fast road bike.
Correct.
So let's have a look at some of the different stats then, shall we?
Sure.
Rolling resistance, I'll leave the links in the description to the actual rolling resistance at third party. Hope that's all right with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's have a look at the weights.
Yeah, sure. So the weights, if you compare a 28C, which is the most common size that most people go for, the ride armor comes in at 375 grams.
Okay.
And for your folding version of the RUBINO Pro, you're looking at 270 grams. So you get 100 grams lighter.
So that's stated. In mind,
that's folding.
Okay.
That's our stated weight. If you go to the TLR version though, you're looking at 335. So basically about 40 grams lighter than a ride armor.
Per tyre. Yeah. Okay. Difference in puncture protection. You've got a difference in weight.
Exactly.
Difference in rolling resistance. What about the availability of cross sections?
So the nice thing about the RUBINO Pro, if you have an older bike that's got rim brakes and less clearance, that's still available in the 23C.
Oh, right, okay.
And it goes all the way up
these
to,
days.
I know, exactly. And it does go up to a 32, but like I say, with the ride armor being
23 to 32.
Correct, yeah. But the ride armor being a more modern tire, we start that at 26, and then like I say, in 2mm increments, all the way up to 38.
Okay.
So if you have an older bike that can't take anything like a 26 or 28, the RUBINO Pro is still your best option. We even offer it in a 650 by 23 as well.
Okay.
For that smaller wheel size, which obviously isn't that common nowadays, but it's good to know that it is available too.
And then in terms of wheel compatibilities, we've got in the RUBINO, you have a wheel that is folding, which goes with tubes.
That's right.
And then it's TLR.
But not hookless, and that's important.
But not hookless.
Correct. And the reason for that is the RUBINO Pro being one of our, older lines, predates hookless technology. Where the ride armor being only released 2 months ago, that is 100% up to date. And like I said, you can use it on a hookless and a hook rim from 28mm upwards, which is the standard for hookless.
Okay, so then that's the RUBINO Pro. And then just coming straight into the ride armor, as you said already, it's one tire, inner tube, hookless or hooked.
Correct. And we even make that kind of quite obvious on the packaging where it'll say ride armor, tube and TLR. Okay. And even on the hot patch as well on the tire, there's 3
hot
maximum.
Patch, I like that. I've never heard it described as...
That's what we call it.
It's a hot patch.
And it's got 3 maximum pressures on there. So it makes it clear that on this 28, if you run an inner tube, you can go up to 115 PSI. If you're on a conventional TLR wheel, you can go up to 95. And the hookless standard, 72 PSI max.
Okay, and there you go. That is the comparison between the ride armor and the RUBINO Pro. Thank you.